My name is Jonathan Gillum.
And this is The Experts. This is Jonathan Gillum, and this is The Experts on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And we are going to have a great show tonight. I'm going to have Scott Uhlinger call in just a few minutes, former CIA operations officer. We're going to talk about some NSA abuse. We're going to have Michael Jack come on, and a former FBI special agent, to talk about Jeff Sessions. About what he's trying to do to wrangle sanctuary cities, and also, should Jeff Sessions be fired? And then my good buddy Ralph is going to come on. He's a former Marine and a pseudo celebrity. I think he's a celebrity. He's had his own show, so I guess that makes him a celebrity. We'll talk more about what he's done, and we're going to talk about, he's a former Marine, we're going to talk about the transgender issue in the military. I'm going to give you a little bit of talk about that right now, and then we'll talk more about it with Ralph when we get to him here in just a little bit. So why don't we get started? Have a little drink of coffee there. And one of the things we're going to talk to Scott Uhlinger about is we talked yesterday with John Guandolo about the Awen brothers and all these different individuals, and that have been accessing the IT equipment for many congressmen. Just this person was basically passed around, Imran Awan. And he especially worked for Debbie Wasserman Schultz after he was fired. But as you're going to see, I'll play a video in just a bit with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, in exchange that she had with the Capitol Police. And she's a nasty individual, first of all. Let me do I always do my Debbie Wasserman Schultz impersonation here. Let's see. This is basically what the whole thing sounded like when she was talking to the Capitol Police.
Hey, why don't you give me my computer back and stop hassling me, man? Gosh. And she flips that greasy hair. I'm Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
She also did the voice for the Buffalo Bill in the Silence of the Lambs movie. I don't remember that, but when he threw the lotion down and said,
"It pushed the lotion on its skin."
That was actually Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Most people don't know that. It was actually doing the voice for that. So anyway, she is an odd individual. I don't know how these people continuously exist in government, except for the fact that the people are not taking the lead. I was just looking up before we came on here about... You know, we get this question all the time, and people say, no, our government is a republic. Others say it's a democracy. And the way the Founding Fathers wrote it, it is a republic, but it has pseudo-democratic characteristics about it. If we were a true democracy, and this is something that jumped out at me hugely when I looked at this a little while ago, is that a pure democracy is one in which the people do all the votes. It's one in which people have all the power. Now, what does that sound like to you? If you know what true communism is, that is actually the goal of true communism, is to get to the point where there's no government and the people rule. Well, that's never going to happen. Human beings were made flawed because of sin, And we are never going to be able, if you ever watched the movie or read the book Lord of the Flies, the human beings will just never be able to fully exist without some type of governance. You could have 99% of all great people, and then you're going to have the 10% or the 1% of power hungry people that will do and say whatever they have to do to get to the top, period. And then they will rule with an iron fist. It always happens like that. And by and large, people will split up. They will divvy up amongst, and it's funny how the Democrats are always saying that, we should all love and let live and do all these things, but yet they're the most divided group of people I've ever seen in my life. Now, I'm not going to sit here and bash liberals, because I don't want liberals to think that I don't think that you have the ability to be free thinkers. But anybody who, there's people on the conservative right who are they basically worship their candidates. So you have the John McCains or the Rand Pauls, and even I'm a Trump supporter, but I don't worship President Trump. There's people on the right that you can't say anything or question anything that he does, because evidently you're some kind of libtard, or I don't remember all the different names that I've been called before when I bring up things that I've questioned about the president. And but you get the same thing on the left. And I challenge people who are liberal to think freely and to listen. That is the biggest thing you can do, is listen. You have to seek out experts, not just people who tell you what you want to hear. And that's a big problem that we've had, not just in politics, but because we have a pseudo-democracy where the people are able to elect representatives to represent them. The problem with that is that they start worshiping or celebrating these people, when the reality is, you're not hiring these people so that they will be famous. You're hiring these people to make sure that the rule of law is intact, and to make sure that whatever the country needs is set the way it is meant to be set. And it looks like Scott Eulinger's calling me before I'm done. And hold on one second here. Scott Eulinger.
Hey.
Hey, hold on one second. You're live, but let me just finish with this little rant real quick, and then I'm just finishing up right here. So anyway, as I was saying there, we do have a republic, but we have a pseudo democracy. But the problem is that the people in their pseudo democracy roles have basically given over to the Republican and the Democratic parties, to the point where the people are not engaged. They get spun up when there's an election. They get spun up when something happens, or when their special interest is potentially injured. But yet overall, the people in this country have resigned themselves over to being controlled by a group of political elitists and a ruling class, and that's not the way it was set up. So that's why we end up finding ourselves in positions where we're looking at people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and other people that really just don't have the qualifications to be in there to make the simple decisions about what needs to be done for the country, and who might be a threat to the country. I mean, their jobs are actually quite simple, but they make these things difficult because they just won't fix the problems, because they are in it for their own personal gain and for the gain of their party. So with that being said, Scott, I'm going to go to the A block, and I'm going to bring you on. Stand by 1 second. All right, Scott Eulinger, let me get your picture up here. See, where is your picture? There it is. I just drank coffee and it went down the wrong freaking tube.
Oops.
This is clear transparency on this show. I am not perfect. I drink coffee. It goes down the wrong tubes. I cough on air. Whatever. Okay, so here we go. We have great audience.
Greetings from Amish country.
That's right. You're in Amish country. That's right. So we have
I just passed a farm auction. I didn't participate, though.
You know, when I was driving through Ohio, which has a big Amish population,
Yep.
it was interesting because we were on a main road. There's a lot of traffic. And the Amish they just simply walk down the road like it's a sidewalk. They don't really have the concept of moving vehicles that could crush you. They just walk down the sidewalk, and not even in not even in a row. They're like abreast, walking in the road. So it was interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sounds a little bit like Tajikistan. Where people stand in the middle of the road with no street lights and trying to cross traffic with 3 kids in tow. You know, that's always a nice thing to turn on to. You know,
one time I was in Honduras, and we were in a place called Trujillo, Honduras, which is, man, it's as close to the wild, wild west as you could ever get. And we just stopped what we were doing. I mean, this is a very dangerous place, but we literally stopped in our tracks. There was a guy driving a motorcycle with a kid sitting on the handlebars, his wife sitting behind him side saddle holding a baby, and another kid sitting backwards on the rear fender holding a lawnmower. I kid you not.
Now that was a Kodak moment. I mean, too bad you didn't catch that on film. That's amazing. I've gotten some good pictures of like that type of thing, but I can't top that one.
Yeah, he even slowed down to go over speed bumps, and I was like,
oh my God.
Yeah, it was crazy. So, okay. So tell us about, you wrote me today and said that about NSA abuse. I want to get to that because I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but I want to play something real quick for you, and I want you to hear this because especially being somebody who's a former CIA operations officer and a chief of station, you have seen espionage, and you've seen counter intel operations, and I can't figure out with this. We had John Guandolo on last night. He's an expert about the Muslim Brotherhood, and we were talking about this guy who was an IT guy, Awan, for all these Democratic solely Democratic congressmen, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, where they went in, and I guess the congressional police took her computers, and she's very upset about that. Well, it's puzzling to me because they just simply it seems like these congressmen are not worried about the potential threats that these people have. So let me
exactly. It just exposes the lie that, all the Democrats, they're all worried about national security. That's why they're obsessed with the Russian collusion, because of national security. But then you see what their actions, and you see that they care nothing about national security.
Nothing. So here's what I'm going to do. I got to figure out how you can hear this, because I'm going to play this. Do you have your computer on? Are you watching the show?
I do. I do have my computer on.
Okay. So if you got the show, I'm going to play the sound bite, and after it's over, it'll take a delay for you to hear it. Then I want you to come back on. I want you to just talk about this a little bit, because I got to unplug this. I got to unplug you from the phone. I only have one outlet for this.
Okay.
Stand by. But I still got you on speaker. All right, here we go, folks. So I'm going to pull this up here and force people to look at Debbie Wasserman Schultz while she talks. Okay, here we go.
And then lastly, I'd like to know how Capitol Police handle equipment that belongs to a member or a staffer that's been lost within the Capitol complex and found or recovered by one of your officers. What happens?
Sure. Well, it's processed on a what's called a PD 81, which is a property record. And depending on the property, depending on how if you can legitimately determine ownership, then it's generally turned back over to the owner of the property. If it's part of an ongoing case, then there are other things that have to occur for that to happen.
So if a member says that they have equipment that's been lost and you find it, it would be returned to the member?
In the general sense, yes.
Okay.
You have to identify. You have to be able to positively identify the property and be able to establish ownership.
Right. And if ownership is established,
if it's part of an ongoing case, then there are additional things that need to be done.
But if the member owns the equipment and there is no ongoing case related to that member, then the equipment is supposed to be returned.
Right. In a general sense, yes.
No, I mean in a specific sense. If the member loses the equipment, says they lose the equipment,
Yes, ma'am.
and it is found by the Capitol Police, it is supposed to be returned.
If ownership has been established,
Right.
it'll be returned. If it's subject to an ongoing investigation, there are additional things
Okay.
that need to be turned
But
over.
not an ongoing investigation related to the member. If the equipment belongs to the member, it has been lost, they say it's been lost and it's been identified as that member's, then the Capitol Police is supposed to return it. Correct?
Well, it's not I can't give a yes or no answer on that because I know.
It's a simple
more
yes or no
parameters.
answer.
Well,
If you if a member loses the equipment,
Yes, ma'am.
and it is found by the Capitol Police or your staff, and it is identified as that member's equipment, and the member is not associated with any case, and that is their equipment, it is supposed to be returned, yes or no?
Depends on the circumstances. And if the circumstances are.
I don't understand how that's possible. Members' equipment is members' equipment. Under my understanding, the Capitol Police is not able to confiscate members' equipment when the member is not under investigation. It is their equipment, and it's supposed to be returned.
Well, I think there's extenuating circumstances in this case, and I think that, working through my counsel and, the necessary personnel, if that in fact is the case, and with the permission through the investigation, then we'll return the equipment. But until that's accomplished, I can't return the equipment.
I think you're violating the rules when you conduct your business that way, and should expect that there would be consequences. I yield.
All right, let me get Scott plugged back in here. All right, did you get a chance to watch that there?
What was that, John?
Did you get a chance to watch that?
No, I'm having a problem. I didn't, but she's basically defending her actions with the brothers. Yeah?
Well, what she's saying is that they confiscated her computer because it's involved in this case. There's reasons for the law enforcement to confiscate her computer. She is making the point saying that if it's lost and it's a congressional member's computer, do they have to give it back to me? He said, yes, that they would give it back to them. And she said, okay, then it should be given back. And he keeps going back and saying, not if it's involved in investigation. She said, well, I'm not involved in investigation. I'm not directly involved in investigation. But actually, she is involved in, and so is that piece of equipment.
It was her, right. It was her decision to hire these guys. And probably with her, stamp of approval, she was hired by numerous other people.
But what is alarming to me is that, so when you were on the job, and even now that you're not on the job, I see certain things that I was privy to when I was in the FBI and all these other agencies I was part of. And so when I see things going on, I say, oh, that's definitely extortion, or that's definitely the mob, because I can see it. I see the characteristics of it.
Exactly. And I'm much the same. Exactly.
So when you listen to somebody like this, that is this upset because a computer that has to do with a guy who's connected to Hamas, connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, and has been arrested by the FBI for financial crimes.
While getting ready to flee the country.
And she has pushback on this. What does that say to you as an intel officer with somebody who has that type of behavior that's a congressman?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it simply says that she has a much closer connection to him than she would like made public. Obviously, she's vouched for him. She's, maybe written recommendations for employment with him. And it's just a horror show. I just hope that, that this will be given the attention that it's really due, because, we've both seen like a little bit about this starting several months back, and now it seemed to be gathering a little bit of momentum. And, but of course it probably will be totally ignored by the mainstream media. But this is really bad stuff, because we not only have, criminality here, but, there certainly could be, obviously it could be espionage here. I mean, sure. They certainly would be able to sell this stuff. I mean, congressmen talking about legislation dealing with the Middle East, with the Syrian war, anything. I mean,
can you
would be of interest to any number of parties.
Can you educate the people about what espionage actually is? Because people sometimes mistake espionage for treason. Can you explain to everybody exactly what espionage is?
Well, I mean, usually intelligence officers or spies, we deal in information. And so, information is power. And so any inside information, whether it's political, whether it's military, whether it's economic, is going to be valuable to somebody. Mm-hmm. So these guys were associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, and they have numerous contacts back in Pakistan, and they certainly had the ability to to hack into maybe email and other traffic that these congressmen were conducting, and it has to do with policy and all. I mean, I certainly would like to have recruited a member of the European Union Parliament just to find out, okay, what legislation is being discussed, how would it affect U.S. policy, what is EU legislation on Russia. That way, if America knew about it, we could take actions to either support what the Europeans want to do or go against it. So, that's what espionage is. And these guys were perfectly situated to conduct wide-scale espionage with, I think they were employed by like about 15 congressmen at one time. So not only are they making boatloads of money, because these guys collected, the one guy, Imran, collected $1.2 million in salary since 2010.
Yeah.
And his brother and his wife made $1 million each. That's a little bit more than the average congressional staffer.
Right. Now, who was this who was just saying this? Christopher Bum is saying CNN will not cover this for 1 millisecond. And that's true. They're not. The other day, trying to think what was happening. Something was happening, and they wouldn't cover it. They were only covering the stuff with Russia. I don't remember what the other thing was, but the media is not covering this at all.
Oh, right, and they won't. And it's just, I hope that you and I both have the opportunity. I would love to meet again some of these mainstream media journalists to tell them just exactly what I think of them. I mean, I have if I didn't hit them, punch them outright. I mean, they're the most pathetic bunch of. I mean, it's the low point of journalism in the last probably 200 or 300 years. It's unbelievable.
I think it's the lowest point in journalism, but I think it's probably the highest point in propaganda that I've ever seen, because they are they're literally doing a better job at propaganda than Hitler and Goebbels did during World War II.
They are, exactly.
I mean, they've snowed half of this country.
Right, exactly, and they rely on and even articles that they put out, they rely on people's ignorance, for instance, of the intelligence community. Okay, like for instance, the 17 intelligence agencies, they make it with the Russian collusion thing or whatever. They make it sound like Russian interference in our election. They make it sound to insinuation that 17 intelligence agencies all had independently verified information that the Russians fooled around with our election, when that is not the case. Someone like you or I sees it and says, okay, well, that means it's, the NSA, CIA, and maybe DIA or something, and the other 14 are just following along. But the average person doesn't know that. And the people writing the stories, they know that.
Well, they also
take advantage of it.
Also, the fact is that when they say agencies, they're really talking about the political appointee at the top of that agency. And all of them, at that point in time, were put in place by Barack Obama. So when they say 17 agencies said this or came up with a report, they're talking about the directors who were put there by a president, and they swear an allegiance to the whatever politician is in charge, and they're the ones who came up with. They weren't talking about the Scott Eulingers that were in the field. They're not talking about
exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then you can see with this NSA thing. I mean, there has been some news about it. It's not a lot of new revelations. It's just kind of the same thing rebottled. And what they're talking about is that, I guess, they've gotten more information on an NSA, basically like an Inspector General's report that held that there were numerous violations of procedure being conducted under the Obama administration. So it's nothing would be a big surprise to you.
Yeah.
But I guess what they're talking about is that there was, large scale, just at minimum, gross negligence in the handling of American citizens' names. Okay, it has to do with, for instance, in the NSA, they have two ways of monitoring stuff. Okay, they have the upstream and downstream. Again, these are nice terms that kind of are confusing to the average person. Heck, they're even confusing to me. Mm-hmm. But what the downstream means is they're collecting foreigners' email accounts. You're a foreigner, you're a bad guy. Downstream, I'm collecting your email. Okay, that's fine. But then there's something they call the upstream system. And what that is they collect emails and internet messages entering or leaving the U.S. from the phone company switches directly. And what they do is they're not just looking for the bad guy, Jonathan Gilliam's email. They're looking for any mention of Jonathan Gilliam on anyone's email leaving the country or coming into the country.
Oh, great.
So we're talking about monitoring, could be tens of thousands of people and tens of thousands of Americans for that matter. Mm-hmm. And so what they said was in like 2011, the court looking at this stuff, and this was Obama was talking about, he was going to clean this up, these abuses under the Bush administration.
Yeah.
And the court said, okay, look, what you have to do is you only have to allow like searchable, like people can search the intelligence data, but it can only be the downstream information, meaning like the actual bad guy's email account information.
Right.
But they didn't do that. And instead what they did was they allowed all of the, the other probably 10 times as much information that was collected. Every time you talked about bin Laden or something, and he happened to be the person of interest, then Jonathan Gilliam's email message is coming up. And so suddenly they're monitoring, 10 times or more the amount of people they should be monitoring.
Right.
And a lot of them are Americans. And so basically, the NSA was looking at their own people and saying, look, this is a massive screw up, and then so this is sort of a little bit part of the unmasking scandal. Okay, this is more, I think this tends to be a little bit more incompetent than like deliberate, but the unmasking scandal is sort of kind of a part of this where, you're unmasking Americans' names to suit political purposes, using the intelligence community as some kind of opposition research firm.
But
and that's just, it's disgusting.
Here's something, though, that most people don't understand, and I don't think a lot of federal agents understand this, or people work for the CIA or NSA, is that, but I figured this out early on when I was in the FBI, and at that point we weren't using any, because I was on the criminal side for a longest time, and we weren't using FISA or anything like that. So we would write a subpoena for the phone information, or to go up on a wire, or to get people's text, or just to get their toll information and the numbers in which they've called. It doesn't matter what our government has or is privy to. Those private companies have it and are privy to all of it. And people just think that, I have an email account with Google. It's secured. The only way the government can get that is if the government gets a subpoena or a FISA. But that's not true. Foreign governments have access to all that stuff if they work a deal with Google, or if they have somebody on the inside that can get this stuff out.
Right.
And I guarantee you, they don't even come close to having the security that we have in our stuff.
That's right. And somebody who will remain nameless actually spent some time in his career working to recruit these types of individuals in national phone companies overseas
for
the information that they could provide. I won't mention the names as to who that was, but I think you can guess. So, So, I mean, I've done this kind of thing. And so, and it's really vulnerable. There's one good quote, though. I love it because I think it really makes it very clear to everybody. So in this, with unmasking, with these relatively new, these revelations of past misdeeds by the NSA, somebody was quoted as saying the Obama administration was operating in a pervasive culture of impunity. And that is exactly what was going on. Like, basically impunity. We can do whatever the hell we want, and no one's going to say anything. And that is exactly what we got. And Joseph Stalin definitely followed the same kind of, ideology.
See, all this stuff it doesn't matter, and I hope the American people realize this, and I think you could talk to this. It doesn't matter if Barack Obama or Donald Trump is in office. There are people that are just in our government now that it's almost like you did with with individuals recruiting spies to go and work in the national phone companies in other countries. The DNC, the RNC, these people have all got sources all over the place. And that's what is scary to me, is that people within the government are loyal to political parties, which are private companies, and they're not loyal to the American people. And I think there's proof of that all over the place with leaks and so on and so forth.
Unfortunately, yeah, I think you're right. Some of it has to do with, there's always going to be spies. There's always going to be people who are willing to sell information.
But it's who they're spying for. I literally think they're spying for these political parties.
Right. What I'm saying is, some of this could be boiled down to, a generational transition. People coming on board now, or the newer generation of people have a different view of these things than perhaps people as old and broken down as ourselves. They look at these things differently, and they don't have the same ideas of patriotism and morality sometimes that we have. And this is a product of our progressive school system from cradle to grave. And now we're gonna start reaping the devil's whirlwind, because this kind of thing is just going to become a daily occurrence from now and into the foreseeable future. That's what I'm afraid of. Right? So Donald Trump or whoever, they can try to do as much as they want, but it's so clear on an absolutely elemental level how corrupt and mismanaged Washington is as a whole, that they can't seem to do anything correctly at all. I was just actually talking to my parents about this today. It's incredible.
But Scott,
go ahead, please.
This is what's interesting. You are this highly trained, not just a operations officer for CIA, but you were a boss of other operations officers in the CIA. Don't you feel like these people not doing anything right it's almost like this Trump-Russia investigation where they say, oh, we know that this is happening. They don't have evidence. They just say we know it. And then all of a sudden the evidence appears to validate everything that they say. That's created evidence, manufactured, never heard of investigation like that. When you look at Washington, D.C. and the way that they work, as a trained intel officer, don't you see some agendas that it's not just that they're incompetent, it's not just that they have infighting, it's that their agenda is not to fix these things. Doesn't it look like that?
Right, exactly. That I would say that is true in many cases. That's right, exactly. These people, because nobody could be this incompetent in whatever endeavor you want to choose. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, nobody could be that incompetent. There's a reason for it, and the reason I'm sort of sensitive to this stuff is because, remember, for my entire career, this was my job to look at foreign governments and look at them as in what way can I exploit this foreign government? What is the current scandal in the country I'm in, and how can I use that scandal to access people to obtain intelligence? So, I can't help but use those instincts and experience when I look at what's going on in our own government. And if I were a Russian or a Chinese or anybody, the ongoing chaos in our government, this has got to be the happiest time for, spies, foreign intelligence officers who are seeking to undermine the United States. Because of our own corruption and special interests, we're serving ourselves up on a platter to them.
Right.
It must be like shooting fish in a barrel, the way sometimes I felt in some countries with the things that were going on. I felt like they're setting me up for success by what they're doing. And the same way, we are setting up other countries for success by our constant mismanagement of intelligence or law enforcement or anything. And that's the scary thing.
Hey, one last thing before I let you go.
I don't know if there's a way. I don't know if there's a way back out. I don't know if there's a way out of it ever.
I don't honestly. I don't either. And I've talked about that several times, and that is a scary thought that we may be living in the day and age when this country folds. The fact is that we have a whole generation, multiple generations of people that's why this whole transgender issue is bothering me so much, is because they refuse to look at our military as a fighting force and something that has to be made perfect. It has to be the perfect fighting force in order to support the true freedom here in the United States. And they're willing to compromise that for less than 0.03 of the population so that it's fair.
Or if you want to look at it, more cynically, perhaps it's a deliberate undermining of U.S. military morale.
Yeah.
So I mean, for one thing, when the thing that nobody thinks about, of course, are the secondary effects. Something like the transgender issue, or even the allowing declared homosexuals into the military. What you wind up getting is you're trying to make yourself interesting to the 0.2% of the population that is transgender, and like a lot of those really want to sign up to be in the Navy or the Air Force. Yeah, sure they do. But what you're doing is the normal people from Arkansas, people from Texas, people from all the all walks of life in the United States who have a family tradition of military service. The day's going to come where Johnny in Texas is going to say, "I'm going to join the Army," and his dad says, "No, you're not," because it's become this cesspool of transgender political correctness. And so the kind of people, the quality people you want to go into your military are not going to do so because their traditionally minded parents are going to tell them not to do it.
Right.
And
I've already seen
I have
that.
A daughter who's
I've already seen that.
Right. And I'm at the point now, if it continues the way it is, so here you got somebody who served in the Navy for 28 years. And I don't know if I can say, this is something you really should do. If I had a son, which I don't, I have a daughter, but I don't know about that. And that's a very scary thing that somebody like me, I've been raised around the military since I was 17 years old. And if it can give me pause or you pause, man, that is a big wake-up call.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Well, I want to have you on more. So I know this stuff we haven't even really discussed the latest stuff on the Russian investigation and that whole nonsense. I'd love for you to come back on. If not, well, probably next week, because I'm going to be traveling on Friday to D.C. for a speech for the
okay, good.
Yeah, so I'll be down there. But next week I'd like to have back on to talk about Jeff Sessions and all this stuff. I'm going to talk a little bit about Jeff Sessions tonight, but I'd like to have you back on to talk about more of that.
Right. I'll be out with my family. We'll be out in San Diego and San Francisco, but I don't see a problem with me calling in, at that time. So
yeah,
because I'll be reading what's going on and all. So
well, if I can
give you a report from the West Coast,
that'd be great. Because not DC, not definitely. San Diego is probably one of the greatest places on earth. If it wasn't in California, I think San Diego should be its own little like Switzerland where nobody bothers it. It's just there. San Diego's great.
Exactly right. Maybe I'll see some of the team guys. I'll actually be staying on base.
Okay.
With my family. So I'll probably be running into some people.
You got it.
I'm going to go see a former frogman I know, a good friend of mine who is also agency, by the way. San Francisco when I'm over there too. So I haven't.
Well, tell them I said hello and keep living the dream. Otherwise, they're going to be resigned of doing free internet television like myself. Oh my goodness!
All right, great, John.
All right, buddy. Thank you very much, my friend.
All right, thanks a lot. Now,
all right.
Sure thing. Talk to you later. Now.
You got it.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, there you go, folks. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to have Michael Jack on shortly, but I want to go to my good buddy Ralph real quick. I just want to bring him on for a second, and because I'm running a little bit behind here, let me call him up. And I think I've said Ralph's last name on here before, Ralph Randolph. There was a show called The Devil's Ride that was on, and I'm going to pull a picture up here for him just a second. Let me get Scott's mug off here, and I'll pull Ralph's picture up here in a second, and you'll probably recognize him. But let's go ahead and call him. We're going to talk. He was a former Marine, and he's also been pretty high up in I won't go into great detail about it, but one of the famous biker groups. So we're gonna talk to him. Let's call him real quick.
It's Ralph. Leave your name and number.
Yep. We're not gonna. Okay, so we're not gonna leave a message for him. We'll get him to call back. Let's see here. Let me write him. Stand by, folks. So we'll go to Michael Jack now, and Let's see here. All right, so let's go to, where are we here? Let's go to the B block. And we are calling Michael Jack. Hold on a second, waiting for the phone to connect. There it goes.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
What's going on, my friend? You're on. Your face and your name are up on the screen here, and we'll go back. We'll find Ralph here in a minute. But what I want to ask you about, and I think everybody knows you're a former FBI special agent, GS-15, and there are a couple things I want to ask you about Jeff Sessions. First and foremost, do you think Jeff Sessions and it should be fired? Is there any way to clear out this whole mess that's in the DOJ right now? Because we've talked about this before. Comey, Muller, Rosenstein, and even Christopher Wray, who is the potentially incoming director of the FBI, are all four good friends who worked for long periods of time as attorneys in the DOJ.
Are you asking me what I think should happen? What I think should happen is they should clean house in the DOJ, but I'm not sure that Jeff Sessions should go.
You don't think that he can be fired, you mean?
Oh, he could be, but I'm not sure that that's the deal here.
Yeah.
You know, I'm trying to think a little bit more strategically, sort of like Trump would do if he was playing chess.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know that this thing, because, you know, Sessions isn't saying anything, right? He's just out working.
Right.
How do we know this thing is just not a deal to kind of take the focus off of the Russian thing and put it over on something else that's kind of made up between the Donald and Jeff, over steaks one night a couple months ago, and it rallies Congress around Sessions. You know, they're wanting to protect him. They're all his friends and everything, so that he can take off and start doing some of the more radical things that he wants to do, you know, some of the stuff that some congressmen don't, agree with. And it'd be hard to come back and come out, after bolstering him up, it'd be really hard for them to come back and criticize.
Yeah. The problem I have, that I'm looking at this not from a whether or not Sessions is great perspective. I'm looking at this from a perspective of, was Sessions, and the reason why he recused himself, was all this by design? I mean, here's the problem I'm having, Mike, is that there's so many things that we're seeing in government right now that it's just too clean. You know, Sessions was right by Trump the whole time. Trump puts him in as the AG. He immediately recuses himself when, if you're not guilty, why recuse yourself? And that put a certain thing set in a certain order of things to happen. Rosenstein getting in charge, Comey not being prosecuted properly or fired properly, leaking that information, Mueller coming into play, and Christopher Jack now coming into play. Christopher Wray coming into play. It's like all these things are so clean, and it's worked out so well for the left that, just like the Russia investigation, it almost seems as though this stuff is really just being manufactured, and it's happening as a plan. I don't know.
Well, I think you're partially right. I think that, the Obama folks, and, when they were on their way out, they spent that last few months since the election until January 20th orchestrating their grand plan to be able to take down Trump. But I believe that the president is ahead of him. And I also believe, he's in some ways he's using the media, and he's manipulating people in order to get it around to his where he needs them to be. And I could be all wrong, but I'm thinking that I really think that the president is like 4 moves ahead of these guys, and he's using their own people against themselves. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it could be. I mean, it could be, but
yeah.
I don't know why he's allowed. Like, this is what was crazy, and I'm glad I was going to ask you this the other day, but I didn't have you on. Have you ever heard of authority being given to a prosecutor that Rosenstein gave to Mueller? He literally said, you have, I wish I had the exact words, but this is pretty close. He said that you have the power to investigate related issues that have to do with the Russian investigation and anything else. That was like, that's the authority he was given.
Go back to Whitewater. You know, during the Clinton administration,
right?
Ken Starr went everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's precedent for that. He went all over the place and didn't come up with a whole lot of anything, but he did a lot of investigating. And I remember at one point in time, Louis Freeh was trying to get them to come up with a special prosecutor on Chinagate. Mm-hmm. And that never came to be, but it should have. Mm-hmm. So there could have been a lot of fallout from that.
What was that? What was that? I don't remember that.
I can't remember all the details to it. It had something to do with some.
That was during the Clinton.
I don't want to speak out of turn. I'll have to Google that one. Yeah, it was under Clinton.
Okay. Well, I'm sure somebody ended up dead. Most likely.
Well, you got about a 1 out of 60 chance that somebody did.
Yeah, exactly. There's no, that's only the
laughing about that.
But that's only the people that we know. There's tons of people true. I mean, look, we've spoken out against the Clintons. I'm sure there's the odds of us dying an unusual death before old age gets us has risen tremendously. Especially me, because I'm on TV or on this thing every night talking about them. So,
well, if you were around here and heard some of the things that I've said, we might be in the same boat.
Yeah. So,
anyway,
I was mentioning something yesterday about Jeff Sessions, all proud, goes on and talking about how he's going after sanctuary cities, but he's going to be taking money from programs that benefit cops, and I just can't wrap my brain around how that's going to benefit anybody.
Well, you made a good point yesterday. I was listening to you when you were talking about that, and I don't like the idea of taking resources away from the police either. Mm-hmm. But the thing is about Jeff Sessions and about the Department of Justice is, out of all the grants that go to various cities, the only thing he has control over is money that goes for law enforcement or law enforcement related activities. Right. And you were talking about garbage collectors and that kind of stuff. That would have to be one of the other cabinet members to get involved.
Exactly.
In that. And I think I sent out a little thing where I said, if you want to do that, the president has to get involved. There needs to be an executive order. He can put Jeff Sessions in charge of that and have the other cabinet people, helping him out.
Right.
But, otherwise he's going to have to go to each one of the cabinet, one of the cabinet members that has control over those funds. And that the other problem is the whole budgeting process itself. Mm-hmm. When they do a budget, they do one 2 years out. So the budget they're working on now is to pass us for 2 years from now.
So that's not. And so for 2 years, nothing's going to happen anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, now that's just the budget. The appropriations for what's going on now have already been passed. For this year, there's like 9 appropriation bills or 12. I can't remember exactly what it is, and it's all divided up. Like the Bureau got money from not just DOJ, but they got money coming from the intelligence community money, and they had all kinds of money coming in from different places. We had money, like in Division 6, we had money coming from OCDEF, we had money coming from ONDCP, or the Office of National Drug Policy. We had the regular money coming in, that was just to come to the Bureau to work on, OC and drug cases and that sort of thing. There were so many different shoeboxes where money came in. It's kind of it'd be kind of difficult to kind of figure out which one is who's in charge of it and so on. In fact, while I was there was actually a battle between the FBI and the DOJ about the OCDEF money. Getting back to your question about law enforcement, The place where I might disagree with you are those cities where the chiefs of police are solely in favor of that city being a sanctuary city. And there are some out there.
Oh, there's definitely Berkeley, New York City,
Chicago.
Yeah. So, but what about this? What about, can't the Attorney General, and there's been no mention, these politicians, they won't hurt each other, about like in the FBI, how senior SESers won't hurt each other. They won't go after each other at all. And I don't understand why Sessions doesn't go after mayors and governors and chiefs of police and charge them with aiding and abetting or accessory to murder or any of these other things. Why don't they don't go after them? Because they are direct. What is the difference than if I put a sign up outside of my house and said, illegal aliens welcome, and then I just started housing them, and then some of them were murderers, some of them were drug dealers, and I got busted? What's the difference between a mayor and a governor putting up a gigantic sign through the media and inviting those people there, and then these murders and drug dealers and all these things are happening? What's the difference?
Yeah, well, I kind of agree with your philosophy there. What comes to mind, though, is I lost my train of thought, but you're right in that it's opening the Pandora's box. It's allowing people that aren't vetted, that we don't know anything about, to come into our cities, and you can see the crime rates going up all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing is if those people are going to be charged, the guy you really need to have on board is the United States Attorney for that district, who is also appointed.
Which is also a problem.
The U.S. attorneys are part of DOJ, but they're a bit autonomous too.
Yeah.
You know, and so you got a whole bunch of United States attorneys out there that were appointed by Obama over the last 8 years, and so you got to deal with those guys too.
Wow. Every guest I have on here, it seems like we go deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole, and I just don't know if we will ever get out.
Well, you know what? I was listening to you talking to your
Scott.
What's his name? Your previous guest, Scott. Yeah. And I would have liked to have been on with him for that one. That would have been fun. But I think there is a way out. But the way out, I believe, is we have to make up our mind that we are going to reduce the size of the federal government and cut it back to what it really should be doing, and not all this extraneous stuff that really belongs to the states and to the people to decide. You know, like health care.
How do we...
You know, the federal government has no business being involved in health care at all, period.
I agree with you. And I think the majority of people believe what you're saying. But the question is, how do you rein back that which owns all the power? I mean,
there's a couple of ways, and I think you'd have to go at it systematically. Mm-hmm. One of the great things is the Article 5, Convention of the States.
Right.
Every time we have pushed for one of those and gotten really close, all of a sudden Congress wakes up and does something to try and fix the problem, make the Article 5 thing go away. Mm-hmm. But there are certain things, like passing the Fair Tax Act would be a huge thing, because it does away with the Internal Revenue Service completely, and does away with the income tax. Okay, that takes a lot. That would do away with half of the lobbyists in Washington D.C. Half of them are there because of the Internal Revenue Code. So that you go from 36,000 lobbyists to 18,000. You know,
right.
That would be a big step right there.
Wow.
Repealing the 17th Amendment, I think, would be a good idea, and having senators selected by the legislatures, or the governor of the legislatures of the states they're from. So they're not having to run, they're not having to stick their finger in the air and see which way the politics are coming from. They sit down with their governors, they sit down with their legislative leaders, and they say, okay, what do you think we ought to do here? You know, I'm representing the state in the federal government.
Right. So as it is now, we send people to represent us, our states, in the federal. They don't represent the states; they represent the federal government. And
exactly.
And if we did away with the 17th Amendment, we would go back to where we pull those people out of state government, and they're the representatives of. Is that the way? Is that correct?
Well, it doesn't have to come out. They don't have to be in state government, although some of them probably would be. But they're basically selected by the state government. They represent the states. And, you know, theoretically, when they wrote the Constitution, they wanted the House of Representatives to represent the people.
Right.
And that's why they only have 2-year terms, because they wanted them to be as closely related to the population's point of view or whatever as they possibly could.
But they're not, because there's no term limits.
Yeah, that's part of the problem. That was one of the other things I was going to bring up. We need term limits, and we also need a balanced budget amendment. But, you know, and the senators are supposed to, represent the states.
Right.
That's why they have 6-year terms. They were supposed to be elder statesmen. They were supposed to take the hot and emotional legislation that comes out of the House of Representatives and kind of look at it at a different point of view and review it and kind of what they're doing right now and say, well, let's tweak this, let's fix this or whatever. And then the two houses get together and come up with a better product. The president is supposed to represent the federal government, and the judiciary represents the Constitution.
Right.
When the 17th Amendment was passed, the states lost all their representation in the federal government. Period. And look at the mess we're in ever since then.
Yeah.
Because you don't have that balance anymore.
And when did that pass? Do you know? We need to look that up.
1913.
So 1913 that passed. That meant that
was a bad year.
Go ahead.
That was a really bad year. That was a bad year. The 16th Amendment and the 17th Amendment were both ratified in 1913. They actually passed Congress prior to that. And also the Federal Reserve came around about that time too.
That's very interesting how those three things happened all at the same time, because they, in effect, I'm looking at it, so that was income tax, popular election of senators, and then the Federal Reserve all took away power of the states.
Exactly. Exactly. And you look at that period of time in history, in our history, our political history, that was like the high point of the progressive presidency,
right?
Progressivism in the United States, and it wasn't just Democrats, but it was Republicans as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Teddy Roosevelt was a big time progressive, and he didn't like the Constitution much at all. He was not in favor of it. And Wilson was big time in favor of having a bureaucratic class that would just basically run everybody's life. Yeah, he wrote papers about that.
See, most people don't realize that. So between 1913 and the 1770s, communism was born, and around the 1840s is when Marx was around, and so you see the formulation of all these things that were going on in Europe at that point in time, and how it's very similar to now. I'm going to even go to the point where I'm going to say that individuals that you just talked about represented kind of the beginning of globalism, because that's when technology started to change. The Industrial Revolution happened, and the ability to travel and communicate started to improve. And so people that were rich and could travel, whereas like you have your friends there where you live, I have my friends here where I live, they have friends all over the world, and they travel and they do business all over the world, and so they became globally minded. And it all goes back to that period in time.
I think you're right. It was 1848 when Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto.
Right.
And he had a 10-point plan in the Communist Manifesto. I won't go through all 10 of them, but the two most interesting to me is that step number 2 was to enact a highly regressive income tax, which is what we have right now, and then a highly indexed income tax. And step number 3 was to do away with all inheritance. Well, we got about halfway there with the death tax.
Why was that important to him, I wonder?
To him?
Why was that important?
Redistribution.
Yeah.
Redistribution of wealth. Because you got to remember, we're right in the middle of the industrial age at that time, and you had a whole bunch of real wealthy people, and then or a few very wealthy people around the world.
Right.
That's where your globalization's coming from. But you had all the masses out there. There were no unions. They weren't getting paid much. They were working 12 hours a day. You had kids that were working 7 days a week. All the bad things were happening during that time period. That's why socialism started to take off.
Right.
That's where it came from. And then the point I was going to make is that Marx died, I think, in 1883. But before he died, he was living in London, but he used to write columns for the New York Tribune. Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Guess who's reading the New York Tribune in the 1870s, 1880s? Teddy Roosevelt,
right?
Wilson, Taft, all those guys, and all the academics of the era they're reading all this stuff, and they're saying, "Hey, we can take this and we can Americanize it and make it wonderful." And we've been fighting that battle ever since.
So basically, the same thing that happened then is happening now, where our own politicians and ruling class are the ones that we can thank for bringing us to the brink of a communistic type globalist civilization or failure, I guess.
From my perspective, reading the history and so on, it's never stopped. There's been an ebb and flow all along. Right. There were people that were in FDR's administration. FDR was leftist, but there were people in his administration that had actually gone, prior to him becoming president, had gone to the Soviet Union and studied for a short time under Trotsky and Stalin, and went and saw the collectives and learned about propaganda and all that kind of stuff, and they brought it back to the United States.
Wow. See, that is the stuff. I have a degree in political science, and I was never, of course, I didn't focus. That wasn't my focus when I was studying political science, but they don't really go back to that point. They don't talk about, this is more of an investigative type of conversation, whereas when you study political science in college, it's very whitewashed and very structured, trying to teach you the structures of politics and things like that. And that's very, very interesting. Same thing with psychology. In psychology, we learn about all these things like, I focused on behavioral development and developmental psychology, but yet what's interesting when we look at what the psychology field says is not a mental disorder. I'm talking about transgender. Now, 10 years ago, they were saying it was a mental disorder. So what I was taught in psychology doesn't add up to the way that they make their decisions now. Like there was somebody that I was a psychologist, and they were getting all these emails spread around in the psychology community saying that these people had done an analysis of Trump's behavior on the television, and they came to the conclusion that he was like borderline psychopath and a great narcissist. And I never learned in psychology that you could sit down and watch a persona of somebody on television and make a psychological diagnosis from that. I mean, typically you have to analyze the person. You have to make sure that you're not looking at a persona that, for somebody who is a character on TV. So, but they were running with that. They were rolling with it, and people were buying into it. And so I think whether it's psychology or politics, what we're taught and the reality of what's happened in this country is, it's fascinating what you're telling us. Fascinating.
Oh, when you really start digging into it, there's a bunch of books out there, really good ones, written that cover that era. Most economists that are worth a grain of salt nowadays that have looked at the Great Depression have pretty much determined that if FDR would have just not done anything, just let the market take care of itself, the Depression would have ended about 7 years prior than it did. But all his big plans, they were all, all his big government programs were all based on what they learned from the Soviet Union. They even had, I don't know if you knew this or not, but there was 2 farm collectives in the United States. They both failed, but there was one in Montana and one in Arizona.
What were they?
The collectives, the farm, like they had in the Soviet Union, where they had these collectives,
right.
The farming and everything was done in collectives.
Right.
Yeah. They didn't work, but and the local farmers around him hated it. But
Wow.
There was his programs, FDR's programs. Finally, at some point, there was some of the programs died because the court cases made it actually up to the Supreme Court, and they found them unconstitutional and stopped them.
But we can't even trust the Supreme Court now.
Well, same thing happened. He was in so long, he packed the court. Mm-hmm. And there was one judge in particular who had been from the Harvard Law School, who was also a big-time socialist. His last name was Frankfurter. I can't remember his first name, but he was big-time socialist. He was on the Supreme Court. The FDR put him on the Supreme Court.
Wow.
So
we need to have a whole show just on this point in time in history. I mean, all these people think stuff is conspiratorial and that we get in all this stuff, but the reality is, this stuff can be tracked back. And I'll be honest, and I've talked about this before, and I think you probably have seen this. When you work for the government and you're in the government, you just don't see, for some reason, you don't see a lot of this stuff that's going on. I don't know why that is. It's almost as if you think you've seen so much, you think, this is probably nothing. I talk to people all the time about, I ask the question, why isn't the FBI closely investigating Hollywood for mob ties and for child sex trafficking and all, and everybody's like, you're making a big deal out of nothing. I don't think I am making a big deal, but once you take a step out, you see things a lot differently.
I'll tell you why getting to the Hollywood thing, just my opinion on why they don't really go after those guys is because during the Hoover years, he did go after them. Mm-hmm. And then they had the McCarthy stuff going on too, and that left such a bad taste in people's, even now.
Yeah, but you went through dialogue. I don't know if you were already out, and we went through dialogue training, and they made a point to say that Hoover was going after these groups, and he was collecting information on these groups: Hollywood, black separatists, the gay activist movement, and there were some other ones. And I looked at the guy next to me and I said, isn't that who's causing all the problems now in the United States?
Yep. I
mean, it's the truth. And all these activists they all have the same mantra. It's just they add in, it's like I remember seeing a comedian once, I don't know who this was, they said, if you had I don't remember what show it was on. They had some type of, it was on Comedy Central, a sex robot where they just inputted your name. So it would say the same thing for everybody except your name. So it would say, oh, you're really good looking, Michael Jack. So, oh, you're really good looking, David Robinson. So it wouldn't matter who it was. They would have the same computer that would say the name of the person. And it's like when you look at all these activists, it's the same mantra. Then they say Black Lives Matter, same mantra, gay activists, same mantra. Hoover was looking at this stuff in the FBI. And I think he had a vision of what the reality was happening with communism and all these separatists. But they listen, Germany's apologetic, and look at them now. They're destroyed by Muslim immigrants over there, or whatever you want to call them, refugees, whatever.
Yeah, in fact, I was over there on vacation last year when just before those guys started to show up. I was actually in Budapest, and those folks over there were really upset, and they wanted to build. You talk about wanting to build a wall. I think they ended up putting up fences. That they did not like that whole situation.
Right.
But anyway, getting back to what you were talking about, I think Hoover was, from his perspective, he didn't care about politics other than to try and use them to better the Bureau. But he loved the country, and he did not want to see the country go down the road of communism, socialism, whatever, any kind of ism like that. Mm-hmm. And so did he keep tabs on people and groups and stuff? Sure he did. Was maybe some of the stuff he used, in those days it might not have been illegal because they passed a lot of those laws after he died.
Right.
Yeah, but, he used them. He did whatever he had to do. If he had some dirt on some politician that was, anti-bureau or something, I believe he probably had a little talk with him and said, maybe you might not want to be so anti-bureau, especially when it comes to our budget.
Right. Yeah.
Getting back to what I said earlier, we need to do everything we can to make the size of the federal government about 40% of less than what it is right now.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I think we're going to have there's going to have to be a meeting of the minds. I mean, people who see this, who want to do something about it, we're eventually going to have, and I'm not talking about governors and mayors and people like that. I'm talking about people like yourself, myself, other patriots in this country that want to see a change. People are going to have to take a trip and go somewhere and sit down and figure out this stuff and somehow make it happen, because otherwise the only thing that's going to happen is the people are going to flounder. There's going to be a certain amount of people that pick up guns. When they do that, it's going to cause them to be killed or arrested, because federal agents, they're in the middle of all this, and local police departments are in the middle of all this. And there's going to be there's going to be innocent people getting killed, and people who want to do the right thing get killed, like happened up in Oregon, and nothing will come of it. And people just think that they were crazy. So. I mean, unless you had millions of people that did it at the same time, that'd be totally different. But I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Well, I mean, I'm going to go back to something that Saul Alinsky used to teach. It's in Rules for Radicals. If you want to make a drastic change, a huge change, you don't do it by creating a revolution where you're out there fighting in the streets. And we're not going to have a revolution like 1776 or like the Russians had in 1917 or where any of that kind of stuff, or whenever it was. The revolution has to happen from within. And I know how you feel about political parties, and I feel a little differently, because I think that's where we have to have the revolution.
Well, I agree.
The Republicans.
I agree with you. I said this yesterday, and I've said it before. I think I said it to you guys when I spoke out there. The only way I see actually doing anything is if the people go after the Republican establishment and there's a mutiny in the Republican Party, and the people take over that party and basically utilize, because they own half of the seats of government in this country, and utilize that party to take this country back. I think you're not going to do it with the Democratic Party, and that most of the free thinkers in this country vote conservative, and I think that's the only chance we have. Is performing a lobotomy on the Republican Party and moving forward with your knowledge and patriotism like people have that I've seen everywhere I've gone that are a part of the Republican Party. They're not interested in judging people. They're not interested in a war. They're interested in what's best for this country, and they all feel the same way, that the establishment in Washington D.C. is broken.
But here's what we're trying to do out here. We're starting this on a very micro level. We're getting away from what I call the weeds, and that is just dealing with issues all the time. Everybody's fighting about issues all the time. We're taking a step back and saying, okay, when we created this country, the founding fathers sat down and they didn't look at issues too much. I mean, they did, but their main thing was principles. In the Declaration of Independence, they listed principles. In the Constitution, there are principles. In the Federalist Papers, they talk about principles. Principles don't change. So if you take a look at those principles, and what I've been trying to do, and I've got some other people that are working with me on it, we're sitting down, free thinkers, like you're saying. I call them thought leaders. But we sit down and we say, okay, let's take and see if we can nail it down to 6 or 7 core principles for the party. And that's what we rally around. And you could take 100 different issues, and each one of those issues, if the party's going to support it, they should be able to go back, take that principle and go back to, or take that issue and go back to a principle and see how they relate. And if they don't relate to any of those core principles, then we don't have any business having anything to do with it.
Right.
And that's if you can get people thinking that way, instead of just getting all emotional and fighting about issues, that's how you move forward. But see, that's where the left has got us beat, because they drag us down into the weeds all the time.
Yeah.
They're always talking issues, and they're always using emotion. We got to get out of the emotion and rally around the principles and go that route.
Sorry, somebody was pestering me, wanted to come up and say hi, so he agrees with you as well. He's gonna cough
good.
right now.
I'm glad.
All right, we need.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, I think we need to do more of a show on this, and I think we need to cover this some more. So I'm gonna, but I got to move on now because I want to go real quick and talk to Ralph about this transgender issue. I teased it up, but I'm going to play it last, and I think everybody's kind of fed up with this whole nonsense. So we'll talk about that right now, and then we'll go ahead.
I was going to ask you, when we're all done, or when you're all done tonight, can you call me back? I got a question for you I want to ask.
I sure will. Yes, I will. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I mean, yes, sir. GS15, I will.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
All right, buddy.
All right, see you later.
You got it, my friend. All right.
Bye.
Michael Jack, you still there? Did you hang?
I'm here.
Okay. Tell everybody how they can find you on Twitter and Facebook, because I know people are asking for that.
Facebook is just Michael B. Jack. And Twitter, it's I got two of them. It's Michael B. Jack S.A., Special Agent.
Okay, gotcha. All right, buddy.
And also,
go ahead.
There's an email address, michael@michaelbjack.com.
And you can put that on here if you want while the show's going on, and then people will be able to see it.
All right, boss.
All right, buddy. Thank you very much. Out. All right, folks. That was Michael Jack, former FBI Special Agent, GS15. And let me call Ralph Randolph back here. And we'll go to the C block. This is a long show tonight.
What's up, bro?
What's up, buddy? So, everybody, Ralph Randolph on the phone, former Marine, biker extraordinary, does all kinds of other stuff too as well. And I got this picture. Let me pull this picture up here. I was looking online at pictures of you. Now, I could have gotten your picture that you use for like for acting gigs, but you're just too pretty in that picture. So I went ahead and got one of you on a bike. Let me pull it up here real quick. Hold on.
Well, you know,
there it is.
They Photoshop all that shit. The only way I can be pretty is if they Photoshop me. You know that.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's see. I'm gonna let me resize this real quick. It's not right now. Your mug is over mine, so let's pull that here.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and you got to put the Marine in front of you. I always have to be a little bit bigger than you, John. You know that.
Oh, there you go. Okay, I got you down here. You're like a nice little here's little Ralph right here. All right, there you go. I don't know if you could see this or not. All right, so as far as this, and let me put your name up here too. I got all these ways to do this stuff when I'm rocking and rolling here. Let's see here. Text, there it is.
By the way, I'm impressed by your technology. You're getting it. You know, you're starting to just jump into the whole techno game of entertainment here. Yeah,
well, yesterday I had to pull my show down and hold on one second here, and I had to. Come on now. I had to. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is up there. I had to pull the show down and edit some stuff because I was having technical difficulties. And I guess when I did that, I kind of realized I'm actually learning some of this stuff. So I guess if anything, if this show doesn't ever get picked up somewhere, maybe I'll just go be an editor at one of these networks, and I'll be like a spy on the inside again.
Well,
okay.
It's funny the skill sets that you learn from having to improvise, right, and do shit that you've never done before. And I mean, that's just kind of our foundation. Like, okay, I don't know how to do this, but I'm gonna figure it out. Period.
Well, that's what we were talking about today. I mean, look, so now I'm doing sound. I figured out one of the biggest things I found out about doing this stuff is you have to have good sound. So I figured that out. I got some good equipment, and then Jim DeLong came along and helped me out by getting even better equipment, more professional equipment. Then, with the computer, but I still use a free program, OBS, to broadcast this to Restream.io, which then broadcasts it to YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook all at the same time. And I've got the sound stuff on here. I've learned, and lighting. The other thing is lighting. See all these lights up here? I learned all this stuff from watching people at Newsmax and CNN and Fox. It's crazy, dude, because what we're doing now, I don't know if American public that watches this show realizes, is we're basically doing the same thing that they're doing on television. The only difference is we don't have a narrative. We're not being censored by what if we say something that they don't like. And I'm bringing real experts onto this show. That's not happening on TV.
And your job and your show doesn't depend on the agenda of someone else. What your show depends on is experts stating the facts and what we're dealing with and what we're really looking at. And there's no agenda. Like, you can't get kicked off of your own site for speaking the truth. Where even Hannity, man, he's got to be careful because he's got a pretty good gig, and he doesn't want to get kicked off of his site, so he still has to follow the line as much as he tries to pretend that he's, driving force of keeping this all straight. That's not true.
Yeah. Well, any of the people that work in that environment, and I learned this lesson. I mean, look, I'm seeing people on television all the time that I'm like, I tweeted out today, they were talking about Fox News. I just couldn't take it anymore. I was watching Fox, Martha McCollum's show. She's a very nice person and I think a very professional anchor. But even Martha McCollum, how can she – look, Martha is not an operator, so how can she ask the proper questions of people about transgender? Or in this case, no, what they were talking about on there, the transgender interview was a disaster too. But when they were talking on there about – this congressional IT staffer that we were talking about earlier, Awan, and so she's got a 3-panel group: Chris Direwall, Mercedes Schlapp, and Richard Fowler. None of them have law enforcement experience. None of them have been in and around IT stuff. None of them have worked in the CIA. What good was that interview for anyone? And I was so disgusted by that I had to tweet something out. But I see people on there all the time that they kiss ass and they have an agenda. They want to be famous. They want to be news famous, and so they'll do and say whatever they can to get on there. And I don't know what the deal is with Fox, but they've completely gone off the deep end where they don't call on experts anymore. They just don't. It's like they have a very select few group of people that they call on, and they ignore the people with real experience.
Yeah, well, they're picking the folks that can read a teleprompter really well and look natural reading a teleprompter. I mean, that's the skill. I mean, look at Obama. He was the most natural person that I've ever seen read a teleprompter, and look what he did. Look where he took us. Yeah. So that's what they're doing. They figured that out. They're like, wow, look at the power of someone that can read naturally from a teleprompter. And so that's what they're doing, John. I mean, I just have to say one thing to your followers and everybody watching you. I appreciate you guys supporting Jonathan and this growth of what he's doing, because it's really important to get the truth out there, and someone that can look at something and assess the situation and make a decision. And it may not be our personal view or your personal view, but you still give the facts, give the truth of it. And I think that's the important part of where media really should be going, is to the truth and not about the ratings and a guy that can read a teleprompter well. Because look where it got us.
Yeah. No, I mean, and when we just had Michael Jack on earlier talking about the reality of what's happened to this country in politics and how long it's been going on, I think you can see a similar thing in media where you know, I mean, let's get outside of news media for a minute. Let's look at Discovery Channel. How many shows are they going to have on there about Alaska people that don't really exist, it's all fake and made up, about moonshiners that are fake and all made up? How many different live cop shows are they going to have? How many of these fix-it-up home shows are they going to have? I mean, they don't even try anymore to give the people something that's going to educate them. They'd rather have a show like on the Science Channel that has nothing to do with science, is completely made up. It's mind-boggling to me how we can do something for free here and give people truth and honesty, and they show up to see it from real experts, but yet the regular networks, they just flee from that.
Well, because it comes down to the advertising dollar, it comes down to the ratings, and you understand that. I mean, they have to fall in place. Look at I just saw there's a Air France is started a whole millennial section of their airline. Like what? They're catering to millennials.
Wait, what is that again?
Yes, Air France is now catering to millennials. They're starting a whole new sector of their airline business based on millennials. And I'm like, wait a minute, why? Why can't you just provide the best service in the industry to grow your market share instead of trying to cater to millennials, which blows my mind.
Does the airline industries not realize that they have, if they just gave good service, there's a monopoly on people need to travel. There's only a finite amount of airline industries that are going to come and go. Most of them are absorbed when they leave by another airline industry or another airline company. But this is what I don't get. Why cater to millennials when if you just had people that were happy enough to put on a smile when you came on the plane and gave everybody a little bit of extra leg room, they would fly all over the place.
Right. Why cater to any group? Well, my point was, why carve out such a niche section of any group instead of just going, hey, we're the best airline, giving you the best service and the best price for the best service, and here we are, and we're going to do it the best. We don't care where you're from. And get back to the transgender and
let me say this real quick.
Let
me say this real quick. One of the people on Twitter just wrote in there, there's a group of conservative millennials starting to speak out, and I don't mean anything bad by this at all. I'd like to have them speak out more, but here's what I'd really like for millennials to do. And I don't mean any judgment on this, okay? Because I don't really have to lay judgment out there. What millennials need to do is shut their freaking mouths and learn a skill, have some life experiences before they start talking crap to everybody and expecting stuff. That's what millennials should do. And listen, if millennials have good morals and ethics, that's already a good start. I'll give them some room to speak there. But there's not going to be any millennials on this show unless I particularly want to know about what kind of crappy work you can do and still get by, or how much attitude a person can have without having to actually have done something. That's when I'll have millennials on here. But listen, I will. There was a 17-year-old guy, I talked about him the other day on this show, that it was in my SEAL training class. He was an amazing dude, and I know amazing is not the word that most people would use to describe him, but the fact is he was 17 years old and really just excelled in this type of terrible environment. That guy, when he's 19, if I had this show, I'd have him on this show. But most of these people that call themselves and are proud to be millennials, they've done nothing, and the businesses have suffered, government has suffered, media has suffered, and by and large the people have suffered because these millennials have it's almost like a bodybuilder that sees themselves as skinny. These people have personality dysmorphication, something where they see themselves as like through visions of grandeur. Anyway, that's the end of my rant on that.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, Jonathan. We both and all the veterans that ever signed on the dotted line signed, and we forfeited our freedom to make sure that everybody had freedom of speech. You know, again, we are patriots that support this country and the ideals of this country and everything else, and everyone should be able to speak. but we also support some moral standards too. And the millennials have taken this thing on a journey away from any moral perspective and work ethic and all of those things that we really, forfeited our lives for, and all the guys that have forfeited so much more, to be able to look at history and look at and get experience from that and have some respect for what people have done before you, versus just being a group that's tagged as millennials, and we're gonna take this train off the rails because we are a powerful group.
Yeah.
But they don't even understand what they're doing. I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah.
They don't even understand what they're driving.
I know.
And they are a big group of people, but they're driving in the wrong direction with no moral, standard.
They have no
There's no
understanding of elders and no understanding of people that, like, the FBI was eat up with this, man. I came in there with, having been a SEAL and all these other experiences, and I come in there and I'm not treated, not that I wanted to be treated any special way, but I'm not given. I had people literally that put themselves on the same level as I was, and I'm like, I don't care if you're in SWAT, you're not on the same level as I am. You've not been through the same training that I've been. I had somebody write me one time that I thought was a friend of mine because they'd watched this show, and they were furious at me, and were saying all this stuff and coming at me about how I felt about transgender in the military. And I said, listen, I've been in the military, you haven't. And you know what the person's reply was? You were never in war. I'm serious. That's what the reply was. That's when I deleted them from.
Yeah. So that really bothers me on multiple levels. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, as a small unit, which we've both experienced, there's a certain amount of trust. There's a certain amount of respect. There's a certain amount of being part of the group that is tasked with specialized missions, right?
Right.
So there's a mindset and there's a piece of that goes with that. So a transgender person, good for them. You live your life, man. You got free will. God says you have free will to do whatever you want, right? And we all support that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're looking at a small unit or you're a small group of people doing a specific mission, there's some trust there. There's some stuff there that you just can't get over, and it hurts, because in the Marine Corps they taught us we're only as strong as the weakest link, right?
Right.
So the teamwork factor of this thing. So when you have a team member that's put into this as a social experiment and like, oh, we got to make everybody equal. Listen, the people that are tasked, the killers of this operation, aren't really feeling it with the trust issues and all the other stuff that's going on there. And I just like, wait a minute, stop doing social experiments. You want to do social experiments in admin? Go for it. You want to do social experiments and putting someone into special teams or black ops or any of the missions that require that brotherhood and camaraderie and that trust and knowing what the other guy's going to do and having the sound mind.
Right.
So someone that wants to cut their penis off, it's hard to think that they have sound mind and judgment and moral standard that's going to be there with you when shit happens.
Yeah, or when you wish that was back.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, so stop. So there's some places that you can go experiment with this, and that's good, and I understand that. But there's some places that you should never experiment with this kind of stuff.
And that has to do in a fighting force. Your only focus in the military should be, does this enhance our ability to fight, or does it take away from our ability to stay streamlined? And I was on, I posted the thing on Twitter, the interview that I had today on Fox News about this whole issue. And the guy that I was going up against is a very staunch liberal. And they compare this to the gay and the people who have dark skin and the fight for equal rights for them. It's not the same. Those were both prejudice type of issues, although I will say this about the gay community. The same thing if a guy goes in and is totally flamboyant, and which there was a video of some guy at the Naval Academy when he got his assignment and they have a big event doing some kind of stripper dance, it's gonna, I don't care what people say, and this is not a judgment or a discrimination against people. Nature, and I'll tell it like it is, nature is built to ensure that the procreation of the species goes forward. Anything that goes against that is always going to be shunned because it's not going to be looked at by the human psyche as normal. Now, despite whether or not they have a psychological disorder, the rest of the people, and this is where the media is getting it wrong, it's not whether it's fair or whether or not they're capable of doing stuff. It's whether or not the rest of the people that make up this fighting force that defends our freedom will ever be fully comfortable with it enough to move forward and not go, I don't want that person next to me. Because you are automatically going to have, for many people out there, automatically you're going to have a pushback because it's nature in you saying there's something wrong, there's an issue there, and they're going to have natural feelings. It's not a discrimination, it's not a judgment. And that is different than somebody who says, I'm gay, and they just, that's their sexuality. I think people that go beyond that actually have gone into a part of the mental capacity where they're confused about who they are. They're confused about their gender. They're confused about who they are in their mind. And if you want proof of it, go watch a gay pride parade where people are walking around half naked, sometimes naked, doing sex acts in the middle of the street when there's children standing around. There's all the proof in the world that you need to realize that there's some issues going on here. And those, if you have an issue, you don't need to be in the military. If you identify as a baby and you're a grown person, you don't need to be in the military. If you... There's a reason, and you know this, Ralph, and I've had plenty of people that I felt terrible for because they have flat feet and they can't get in the military, and they're like, I don't know why I have flat feet. I wanted to fly in a helicopter. Well, if you have any type of physical issue that's going to keep you from being a fighting force, you can't be in there because ultimately it doesn't matter if you push a pencil or if you push a bullet down range, you are going to be a combatant if we ever get into a situation where everything's hit the fan.
Right. And with that, Marines, I don't care what job you get in the Marine Corps, you're still a Marine.
Right.
It doesn't matter. And they expect you to be a Marine because there's times when shit breaks down and everyone has to step up. I don't care if you're an admin guy. I don't care if you're whatever pogue or whatever. It doesn't matter. If the shit happens, you better be picking up an M4 and going to work, right? And everyone expects that of you. That's what the Marines are all about. Everyone expects that from you, and you better be able to deliver that. So there's that piece of it. And no one's judging that. And I just want to make sure everybody's clear that I'm not judging anybody for their personal beliefs or their lifestyles or any of that stuff. I'm just saying that in the war fighting program, it's probably not the best place to experiment with this.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
I just said this, and I've had several people already come on, especially on Twitter, saying that, they had asthma, they weren't able to go in. People were talking about height issues or weight issues, they can't go in. Should we just allow them? Because no, we can't allow them. Because they have to be considered part of the fighting force. The other thing is a Spartan lifestyle. People always ask me to tell war stories. I was never in war. I was in Honduras and Colombia and Central South America, which those places are actually statistically more dangerous than war. I'm not saying that makes me any greater, but no, I was never in Iraq or Afghanistan. But one of the things that you definitely see with the fighting forces when they go down range, whether it's in war or whether it's in an area where you're doing foreign internal defense, is the fact that if you don't have cohesiveness and if you have somebody in your platoon that is that doesn't get along with the other people, you have a cancer and you're going to have a problem. Look at Bo Bergdahl. Bo Bergdahl caused lots of people to die because he was a cancer that should have been cut out, and he wasn't. That was a guy. Go ahead.
And it had nothing to do with sexual preference. It had nothing to do with sexual orientation. It had nothing to do with any of that. The point is, if it doesn't fit the unit, it doesn't fit the unit. And that's the weakest link. We got to get rid of those because it brings us down.
Right.
No matter how shit hot, you can have 10 of the most shit hot guys in the world.
Yeah.
And you put one, like you said, a cancer, you put one of those in there, it destroys that unit. So why would we start out that way?
Yeah. I don't get it, and I've been saying that when it comes to, the racism about color of skin and homosexuality, how those things were worked out. They were worked out in society first, and then it was ingrained into the military. I personally don't think that transgender will ever be fully accepted in society unless our society goes down such a moral dirt road that we get completely off track. Now, I'm not saying, let me just say this, I'm not saying that because I want to pass judgment or degrade people who have confusion about their gender. The fact is, if we don't draw a line to where we have to stop and say, okay, listen, there's some psychological issues here. If we don't do that, then we're going to have to eventually allow people to have harems. We're going to have to allow people to be married to animals. We're going to have it's going to go down a road where the American people have to realize, despite what all the world says, and despite what the psychology field may say, because they change their mind based on politics, we have to recognize where psychological issues start and normalcy stops. Period.
Right.
And I
agree with you.
I know it's a shaky.
And like I said, everyone has the right to do whatever they want to do, but to force that on the military is the wrong thing to do. That's all.
It's don't even say wrong. It's the ineffective thing to do.
Right.
I just don't see it making it better. Everything that we do for the military forward should always be about making it better. I remember Mad Dog, one of the speeches he said, he goes, hey man, we all, and I started to speak from a Marine perspective, but one of the things that he said on one of his speeches that really resonated with me is like, hey man, we are all entrusted to leave the Marine Corps a better place than we got it.
Right.
And by doing this and by accepting this and like plugging this into it doesn't leave it better. And if it did leave it better, I would be all for it. But it doesn't.
Right.
So we have to look at this and go, we have to leave this place. We have to leave this institution. We have to leave the Marine Corps, the Navy, the Army, Coast Guard, Air Force. We have to leave it a better place than we came to it. And that should be everybody's mission. It has to be better after me than it was before me.
Yeah.
And we should be passing that on. And that's where this really disturbs me. It doesn't make it better. And I can't see anything that makes that better.
And the American people need to realize it's this simple. They see, like they had on Martha McCullum's show today, a gay ranger, and his name's Robin something. And he's going to come out and say that he served with all these transgender forces. Well, it's not transgender forces. You're in the military. And what people need to do when that nonsense comes on, they need to turn the station, because you can't they monitor. I've said this before. They monitor through the boxes and everything that we have now, real time. Who's watching? How many people are watching? The greatest thing you can ever do, as soon as those people come on, turn the channel, because they don't speak for the other 99.707% of the people in the military and in our population. So they shouldn't be talking about what's effective, because they've already resigned themselves over to some kind of political ideology. And unfortunately, I've got to do a show. I think I'm going to do it on Andrew Wilkow's show tomorrow. I'm not really looking forward to this. They want to have me on there with Kristen Beck, and I'm not really interested in talking to a transgender about this, and especially Kristen Beck, because he was Chris Beck while he was in the Navy. He wasn't a transgender, and that video, if I am on with him tomorrow, I don't want to get into an argument with him, but he dug himself a hole by doing this little show that special they did on CNN where he was wearing high heels and a skirt on the range. I mean, you're not going to wear that into the field.
Right. No, but again, it's not popular for the other 99% of the folks to speak their peace of mind.
Yeah.
It's really bad. Like, oh my God, what are you doing? Well, no, this is how most of us feel, and that 1 percentile feels differently. And why are we taking advice in the perspective of 1% instead of the 99%?
Right.
You know, it's disturbing.
Listen, I'm going to say one other thing before, and then I'll give you your last word. Is I put a thing up yesterday today actually on Facebook, and it was a video. Everybody should go look at it. It's on my Facebook page just before this show was posted, and it's a video history, just of a map showing the different borders since the 1200s or something like that, I think, and or for the past 2,000 years. And it is amazing, and it really speaks to this, and I'll tell you why. Because all these people running their mouths about why we shouldn't have borders, you watch that video, and you'll see exactly why we should have strong borders. And you should also start looking at why do these people insist on this social change in a fighting force when all it does is make it weaker. My advice is don't listen to those people and vote them out of office and get away from this ridiculousness of forced social change. Your last word.
Well, I don't need the last word. I think that there's been a moral shift in our country that we need to recover from, because it's out of control, Jonathan. And a lot of people won't tell you the truth about it, but it really is out of control. When the moral shift of everything, whether you're driving into a parking lot and someone cuts you off, and then it turns into road rage and all this. There's just such a moral shift. There's no kindness.
Right.
There's no respect. There's no compassion. There's none of that stuff. It's just like the whole society is on this moral shift that gets us into a point of no return. And it's really terrifying that this is all being pushed on the military. I mean, it blows my mind.
How strange is it that we got you, a biker, a Marine, myself, a SEAL, an FBI agent? I don't know if that really has anything to do here, but and we're talking about moral degradation, and that's the reality. Well, that's the truth, though.
And I think a lot of people don't understand. You know, being an outlaw motorcycle guy was nothing more than supporting freedom and being able to do what you believe you should be able to do. And most of the bikers are veterans.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to that, and the whole law enforcement thing and all the stuff that happens. I mean, me and you came from completely different spectrums, but we find ourselves right in the middle with each other. And I think that's the dynamic where we have an opportunity to really bring a voice from both ends of the spectrum and go, wait a minute, where are we at as a society? Where are we at as a country? Where do we really want to go? Do we really want to go that far?
Right.
Or do we really want to go, hey, man, we got to get back to the basics. We got to get back to the starting point of this. And that's what we all believed in. That's why we all joined the military. I didn't join the military because I thought, this is a really cool place to hang out. I joined the military when Desert Storm started, man. I'm like, hey, this is World War III. I'm going to fight for my country. And the patriotism and the moral part of that was what drove that. It wasn't about having a job. It wasn't about any of that stuff. It was about, here we go. We're going to war. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, anyway, it's just we shifted so far on a moral level that I think we have to have people that are willing to stand up for a moral standard that we started from. And
well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do from this point forward. I'm going to take the stand where if it's a millennial or if it's somebody who has an agenda and they're saying this is the way it's supposed to be, and they start to confront me on this, whether it be in media or whatever, I'm gonna ask them, you justify it first and show me why these things need to be, not just because you want it, not just because of fairness. How does it enhance the military or life in general? You show me that, and then we'll have a conversation with it. But most of the time, it boils down to fairness, for liberty, they say, for equal rights, and it has nothing to do with reality ever.
Yeah. But that's bullshit, because there's nothing fair.
Right.
Every single thing has to be fought for. The freedom, it's not fair that all the brothers and sisters that died for this freedom, how is that fair? Because a small percentage of people are the ones that sacrifice for that. How is that even fair? So you're right. Give me, I challenge you to give me the perspective to where I can understand where you're coming from to accept that.
Yeah,
Not just because you want it, because you think it's cool, because you think that's what's fair. No, give me something. Share with me how I could understand how you could possibly think this is the direction we're supposed to go.
So Craig Wilson just wrote breaking news from KHOU. I think is that in Houston, I'm assuming. News: a transgender military husband and wife speak out against President Trump and the ban. Now they're calling it another ban now. Okay. We could go on this conversation all night, but when one person cuts it off and another person gets it put on, and then they get married, there's some issues going on here.
Right. So, and cool for them. Good. If it makes you whole, good for you. But don't come in and try to disturb the small unit. Don't try to come in and disturb the military, man, because there's a lot of other places for you to fit. Go do that.
Yeah.
Don't come do it here. And why do they even want to be part of the military? Why do they want to fight the uphill battle in the military? I don't even understand that. Like, there's a lot of places where you're accepted. Why would you even want to go fight this battle? I just don't get that.
Well, I do appreciate people who want to serve this country, but they should realize that when your lifestyle or your psychological issue is a deterrent to effective mission, effective fighting, you should be patriotic enough to say, you know what, I understand that. And if that was the case, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Right. Hey, I support this. I'm going to support it from a different perspective. Me trying to bring, again, back to the weakest link. The weakest link here, no. We want everyone to be the strongest link they can possibly be in this chain, because that's where our strength comes from. Because, again, the chain is only as strong as the weakest link, period. I mean, that's where you were trained. That's what I was trained. That's where it's at. So why do we want to pull the bar down?
I don't know. I can't tell you.
I don't understand. They should be raising the bar. I mean, not pulling it down. Like I said, we should always be raising the bar instead of taking it down. So, anyway, Jonathan, thanks for having me. Thanks for your listeners and viewers and everybody that supports you on every day. I just want to thank all of them, because it does make a difference, and it is getting traction. So thanks everybody for listening. And
you got it. Are you comfortable with that picture? Do you want your pretty picture up there?
I can't see it. I'm on my phone, dude.
All right, buddy. I'm just messing with you.
Well, the funny thing is, the pretty picture, I don't know what good that does me. The angry picture, I don't know what good that does me either. I mean, I just...
Which one do you identify with?
Both.
Oh, gosh.
Sometimes I'm just pretty, and sometimes I'm just very angry.
Oh, my Lord. All right, brother.
All right, bro.
Hey, listen.
You get it. You understand, man.
I got it.
Thanks for sharing your time with me.
You got it, my friend. Thank you for helping us out, and thank you for all you've done for this country.
All right, brother.
All right, out.
All right, good night.
All right, folks. Ralph Randolph, another great friend. Everybody just stand by for 1 second. I got to take care of something real quick, and then we're going to go to the Truth Zone. Right now, while I'm doing this, make sure that you are sharing this. Make sure that you, if you can, go to the GoFundMe page. Yes, I'm thinking about you while I'm doing this. Make sure that you go to the GoFundMe page. That's gofund.me/The Experts Roadshow. And make sure that you donate and help us out so that we can continue to fund this show I just have to hold on one second here. I got to block somebody on Twitter. You can't be telling Maureen to go F off. I don't know who you think you are on here, but Maureen's too. She's a part of this show, and you can't do that. So I don't guess Checkmate's going to pop back up. I don't see him. They're probably shivering me timbers right now. Where are you? Remo, you say you blocked him, but nobody should be able to block anybody on here now because I thought I changed it, unless Twitter goes back and changes it. All right, let's see here. Ding, ding, ding. Hold on, everybody. You got the seal eye on you now. Turds, I'm coming after you. All right, I don't see him. All right. Yeah, I don't see him. Let me know if they pop back up. All right. I think Maureen can take it. She can handle it. All right, let's do this, folks. Man, that was a good show. That was a long show. We've been going now for 2 hours. It's been a long time since I've done a 2-hour show. So much for getting so a lot of... I'm going to be writing all night now. Okay, so let's... why don't we do this? Let's go to the Truth Zone. I'm going to close it up here, folks. Rico's he's like a mall walker. Whenever I start talking, he's walking all over the place. All right, let's do it. Don't forget, share the show. It's hard for me to ask for money, but please support this show. There's 2 ways you can support it: by donating, and then also by telling people about this show. Don't be afraid to tweet people when you see something stupid, or to share it on Facebook when you see these dumb TV shows, and say, go to the experts, 9 o'clock, watch it. The rest of the time, just keep the TV off, go live your life. We'll handle it for you. I mean, you guys are supporting me by basically paying my salary. So turn the TV off. Go do what you got to do. Don't let the TV be your background noise anymore. Just turn it off, and let us be your source of news. There's other people on here as well on the internet that are good sources of news, but you basically don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. Don't let it be background noise for you. Just turn it off. Advertisers will start going away, and people start going away, so that's what you need to do. All right, let's do it. The Truth Zone. Wait, let's let Debbie Wasserman Schultz introduce it today.
Thank you for joining the experts and Jonathan Gillum. And if you don't have lotion on, put the lotion on. My name is Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Give me my computer back.
All right, let's go to the Truth Zone. Boy, I get fired up when I hear this music. All right. Man, this has been a long show. We had some incredible guests. Scott Eulinger, add him on Twitter. The station chief on Twitter. Michael Jack. Look him up because I don't remember. It's Michael B. Jack on Twitter. Ralph Randolph. I don't know his Twitter handle. I have to find that for you. 3 amazing Americans. If you put the amount of years in service and dedication to this country together, you'd be amazed at how much they've done to ensure your freedom. I can't thank them enough. Those 3 individuals, plus myself and all the other people that watch this show. One thing that you got to understand, folks, is that when I went into service as a SEAL, same thing with Ralph and Michael Jack and Scott Eulinger is also a veteran, is that we didn't go in there expecting the military to meet our standards. We went in there to meet their standards. And if there were cases where we weren't fit to do a certain thing, well, then we either worked out harder, did what we had to do in order to fit that standard, or you figure out another place to go. I remember talking with somebody that when we were in officer candidate school that was dead set on being a pilot. But when they got into the air, they realized that things happened way too fast for them, and it wasn't right for them. Another person I talked to had inner ear issues and was constantly sick when they were in the air. They decided to go somewhere else. I know people who were struggling to be a SEAL when I was in SEAL training. I remember one specific night where we were burying these boats in Hell Week, and all the instructors were coming down on this guy, and they said, if he quits, we stop this evolution. And I kept telling him, don't you quit. Don't do it. And he eventually quit because it wasn't for him. It wasn't because it wasn't fair. It wasn't because that somebody was discriminated against him. He wasn't cut out to be there because he couldn't handle the stress. This country was created and founded by individuals that could handle the stress. And they set it up in a way that the people, if they were bound together as one, there would be no stress that they could not handle. But as you can see, it's been going on almost since this country was created. Forces have been trying to divide us. Now think about that, folks. The Founding Fathers specifically wrote in the documents that created this country the phrase, "We the people." We the people. So that we would be bound together to work as one. Nefarious individuals and ideologies that don't believe in our Constitution will want to break up those people. They don't want us to be a group. What they want us is to be fractured so that they can come in and secrete their ideologies and their special interests in. Always, it will lead us down a dark road. If it was not for the Constitution and the thinking of our Founding Fathers, there would still be slaves. Gays wouldn't have rights. Women would not be able to vote. But because of the specific way the Constitution was written, all those things have gone away. I'm Jonathan Gillum. Rico's asleep over there. Stand with myself, with Scott Eulinger, with Michael Jack, with Ralph Randolph, and all the other patriots that join in every night. Tell people about this show, because there's one thing you need to realize. This is the experts, and the truth has arrived. I'll see you tomorrow.
Hello, my name is Dennis Kucinich, and I used to be a bigwig in Washington, D.C., but now I'm just on TV shows and stuff, but I married a woman that's really pretty and a lot taller than me, but anyway, I just want to say hello, and I support this show.
My name is Debbie Washman Schultz, and I want you to go to the GoFundMe page. It's right on the screen right now. If you don't do it, I'm gonna come over with my computer when I get it back from the Capitol Police, and I'm going to rub lotion on you because it makes your skin smoother. You better do it. Kathy, Watchman Schultz, I'm out of here. Peace.
Don't forget Dennis Kucinich. I'm going with you.